we are going to continue looking at Daniel, and we were looking at Daniel and how he prepared and he was distinguished. He had distinguished himself. He didn't just take what God had written in his destiny scroll, even if it was there, it gave him advantage. But we find that he had to pay a price. He had to do something. So let us look at this in Daniel 1. Right there in Daniel 1, we see that Daniel, the king, wants some people that had wisdom. So that favor, that the fact that they already had wisdom, tells me that in their destiny, the destiny scroll is already visible in them. And in verse 3, Daniel 1:3, the Bible says, then the king instructed Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, to bring some of the children of Israel and some of the king's descendants and some of the nobles, young men in whom there was no blemish, but good looking, gifted in all wisdom. So that gifting is the destiny scroll. Already the destiny scroll had been written in all these men. So all the men that the king corrected, I want you to just go back and just pay attention to this, that the king wanted a specific type of people. He wanted a people with a certain gifting. And so he went with the people who are gifted with wisdom. This gifting with wisdom came from God. Whether these people knew God or not, that gifting came from God. And possessed knowledge and quick to understand. So all these are gifts from God, who had ability to serve in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the language and the literature of the Chaldeans. And so we see that this part right here, it is telling us when the king went to look, he had to go, what he thought it is depending on their destiny scroll. And so the king appointed them, and we know, like from there, verse 5, he gave them a certain food to eat, and Daniel refused. But that is not the case. When it comes to the testing of, they had to learn the language. They had to be taught the new language. They had to spend time learning new language, learning new culture. But most of the time, I felt like when we were reading this scripture, this is where God said, most of the time when God is blessing us, when God provides us with an opportunity to serve the kings, most of the time we stop serving our God. Most of the time now we start looking at our abilities and thinking, oh, we are good enough. This is up to us. But God is telling us, no, it is not because of how good you are that you do. This is because of his favor. He has opened that door because of his favor. And so continue serving him even more now, because you need him in that place. Sometimes I find like people who are not gotten married, this is just by the way, but people who are not married, you seek God, you want him to give you the right person. And then when you give them, he gives you the right person, when it is time for dating, you forget about God. You say, oh God, you brought me this far, the rest of the journey, I can go by myself. And we find that is the place that people fall. That is the place that so many things happen, because that particular part of the journey, that particular stress or stretch of the journey, you decide to walk without God. But this was not the case with Daniel. Even if he had been appointed, that was the first stretch. He decided to still, and they agreed right here when they were chosen, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. This became Daniel, Meshach, and Abednego. They changed their name. But when the four were appointed, they made a vow. They almost said, we are still going to serve our God. We are still going to continue seeking after God, even as we are studying. So it is not either one or the other. Some people just seek God and fail to study, but in this case, they did both. They were learning the new culture, they were learning the new ways of the kingdom, and now when it came to testing in Daniel 1:17, as for these 4 young men, this is when they were tested. As for these young men, God gave them knowledge and skill in all the wisdom, gave them knowledge and skill in all the literature and the wisdom. And Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. Now at the end of the days, when the king had said they should be brought in, the chief of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar. Then the king interviewed them, and among them all none was found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore they served before the king. And in all the matters of wisdom and understanding about which the king examined them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers who were in all his realm. Listen, at the beginning, they all had gifts, but Daniel decided, yes, he's going to study, he's going to prepare, but he's also going to seek God. Let us read right there in Daniel 6. So that was in the reign of Nebuchadnezzar. But did this continue? We know it continued because when Hananiah, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, as we know them, their names were changed. When they came before and they were told to worship the statue, they refused. And so they were thrown into the fire, to the fiery furnace, but God rescued them. So they continued seeking after God, but they also continued standing. I want you to understand, God puts the destiny scroll inside of you. But in some places, you have to walk by faith to see God manifest. You cannot say, I am going to go into government. I just felt like I'm speaking to people where God is going to call you into sectors that are hidden, into sectors that where necessarily you are not in a church preaching behind a pulpit. God has called you to the place that you go to work. That is where God has designed for your destiny scroll to unfold. And so for this destiny scroll to unfold in that area, you need both sides. You need the wisdom. You need the wisdom that comes in this world. You need to know the skill. You need to know the trade. You need to know how it is done. But on the other hand, you need God walking with you every step of the way. You can't say, now because I am in this place, that you are not going to marry the two. No, you're going to marry the two. You need God as you are studying, but you cannot go with one without the other. The moment you bring both together, as we have seen in that case with Daniel and Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego, when they decided, yes, they are going to study, but they are going to involve God. God gave them. It is like he continued unfolding and enhancing whatever the destiny scroll he had put inside of them. And Daniel did not stop. He served Nebuchadnezzar well. But in this case, he is serving Darius, the king. And we read this, but in a different aspect. Let us read Daniel 6, right there in verse 3 and verse 4. Then this Daniel distinguished himself above the governor and satraps because an excellent spirit was in him, and the king gave thought to set him over all the whole realm. Listen, this is another king. This is not the first king. The first king, yes, saw the wisdom that Daniel had and decided to set him over the whole realm. But in this place, you can see Daniel is still distinguishing himself. And so in that place where you go to work, regardless of where the work is, you need your destiny scroll to unfold. You need it to unfold in that place. You need to use your gifts and your talents. That place where you are, however hidden it is, it cannot be as hidden as this place where Daniel is. But we see his destiny scroll unfolding. We see the same thing with Joseph. When Joseph is in Egypt, his destiny scroll unfolds and he is able to interpret the dream for the king. We see the same thing with Esther. Esther is married to a heathen king. This king is not worshiping God, but God has positioned Esther in that place of influence so that Esther can be able to bring to bring influence in that place, but also to help and save her people. And so what has God destined you to be? Because look at Esther. When Mordecai talks to Esther, and Esther is afraid. He's saying, no, I cannot go to the king at this time because he has not invited me. And you know, if I go and he does not raise the scepter, that means death. You are either raising the scepter or raising the sword that is going to kill me. So she decided to go even if it meant death. that decision to go and do what was right, because Mordecai told her, maybe you are in this place for such a time as this. Maybe Mordecai at that time was able to say, Esther, maybe this is the unfolding of your destiny scroll. Maybe this is why you are in this place. Maybe this is why you are positioned here. This is your crucible. Are you going to be able to, it's like the fire. You are being tested with the fire. But at that time, maybe you're either going to turn to gold or you're going to turn to dross. It is up to you. When the fire comes, when the heat comes, are you going to walk by faith and do what your destiny scroll requires for you to do? Are you going to stand? But on the other hand, are you going to be prepared? We see Esther also distinguishing herself. It is not only in her beauty. We see that Esther asked for books. She was learned. She knew about being a queen more than just being a queen in beauty, but she knew about being a queen in wisdom. So what does it require? Does it require for you to go back to school? If you have been called into the government, what is it that you need to prepare and to learn about? If you do not prepare and learn about those things, brothers and sisters, when the opportunity presents itself, as it did with Daniel, because the favor of God is going to open the door for you. But even when the favor opens the door for you, it is up to you to decide, are you going to be found worthy? Because when you are compared to the other people in the world, you are going to be competing with other people in the world. Do you know your trade well? Do you know your skill well? Have you enhanced your destiny scroll? What have you prepared? Have you sharpened it? And also like Mordecai, maybe for you, your assignment is to be able to tell the other person, that is your destiny scroll and you need to stand. So do you have pillars? Do you have spiritual sons and daughters, or spiritual daughters or spiritual parents that can be able to tell you, purity, you can make it, you can do this, you can go forth. This is your destiny scroll. You need to stand, you need to pursue it, you need to unfold it. Do not worry about what other people say about it. And just in closing, I want to tell you that when David was unfolding his destiny scroll, here he's facing Goliath and he needs to unfold his destiny scroll. And the brothers are the ones who come to tell him, no, you cannot do that. We see the same thing with Joseph. The brothers are saying, you cannot do this. We see the same thing with Jesus. The brothers are saying, oh, no, the people of Nazareth are saying he's just a carpenter's son. Brothers and sisters, you need to know your destiny scroll and you need to pursue it. Regardless, only you know what is inside of you. If you don't have a Mordecai, don't worry about those who tell you that you cannot do it. Just pursue it, but put every effort to see that it is fulfilled. And in the end of it, God will be able to see, well done, good and faithful servants. And so we are going to stop there for today, trusting that God will be able to say to you, well done and faithful servant, because you took time to unroll your destiny scroll and to live by it, to live by the days that God wrote in them. And I pronounce blessings over you as you choose to do something with this word. Remember, the person who built their house on the rock is the person who decided to do something with what God had praised them. He decided to do something, to act on the word that they had. You had the word, so are you going to act on it? So may God's blessings be on you. And until we meet again, I've been your host, Prophetess Purity Munyi. Blessings.